Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. This is talk number 7. This is the talk where I'll be covering the parent stage of emotional maturity. We have one stage left to go after this, and then we will have the 8th for the last, the elder stage. So, the parent stage, it says here, is the birth of the first child until the youngest child has become an adult. The primary task to be completed during this stage, sacrificially taking care of children. So this is something which, if you don't have the previous stages of maturity completed, will become quite challenging, because to sacrifice for others when you have not fully learned to care for yourself, as was mentioned in the last video, is going to be quite challenging for you. The primary resulting problem, when this task is not completed, is distant or conflicted family relationships, either through abandonment or through an attachment style, where you want to get close, and then you end up wanting to go away because the person turns out to be abusive in some way. This is the reality of the fallen world in which we live. I think I'll cover the attachment styles briefly. Well, let me do that in a separate video. This is very important. You know you're at the parent stage when you can sacrificially care for your children without resenting the sacrifice or expecting to receive anything for your efforts. You may feel exhausted or overwhelmed at times, but you'll still be able to appreciate, not begrudge, your sacrifice. So, this is where the parent stage of maturity is so essential, because without it, you won't be able to enjoy being a parent to your children. Let's take a look at stage 1. Well, I'm going to just cover these 4 attachment styles briefly because I think they're integral to understanding these 4 levels of parent maturity. Basically, these attachment styles are a dismissive attachment, where a person is a part of your family, but they are not able to really connect to you. You feel like they're never really there for you. They're in your house, but they're not really connecting. A distracted attachment is somebody who's always in your face. I need this, I need that. Hey, can I do this for you? And it doesn't end. They never know how to leave you alone. Basically, in my home, my father was a dismissive attachment. My mother was a distracted attachment. So one of them left me alone too much. One didn't leave me alone enough. One couldn't connect. The other had a connection that was always in my face. The third kind of attachment is a disorganized attachment, where you want to connect to a person, you love them, but you're afraid of them at the same time. And you're also insecure in the bond, so when you move away from them, you feel abandonment. When you move close to them, you feel fear. Along with other possible emotions, you may also feel love and fear at the same time as you move close, which may make you think, if you're the child, I have to sacrifice myself for my parent in order for this connection to work. And that's what I did with my mother. Or, when you move away, you may think, now I'm going to be abandoned, so I want to be closer. I had this with my father. So, these 3 attachments can be quite painful. The 4th kind that actually works is a healthy attachment. When you need space, the person gives you space. When you want to connect, the person will be there. My father has learned this, and my mother learned it partially when she was alive. This is very essential to understand, because without this, your attachments are going to work very poorly, and you won't be able to have healthy attachments outside your home, because you will project onto others that a disorganized, a dismissive, or a destructive attachment is normal. And you're going to be looking for that in friends and in a future spouse, which is going to be very annoying after a few years, I guarantee you. If there's already water under the bridge, take courage. This issue can be solved. Believe me, nothing is past repair. So, as a friend of mine likes to say, let's get into it. Well, I first need to say in a healthy attachment, yes, I believe I covered that. Number 1, protects, serves, and enjoys one's family. This is what a healthy parent does. They protect their family from things going wrong. They serve them, they love them, and they enjoy them. They delight in the awesomeness of who they are. This is a very incredible experience. Absolutely. It is extremely important. So what does the community and the family tasks need to be? The community gives the opportunity for both parents to sacrificially contribute to their family. So the community supports the parents in their parenting. You may come across communities that don't do this. This can be a problem. You really need people who understand your style of parenting and who realize that parents need support, because if they're giving and giving, they may get emotionally exhausted. And having a break, having a reprieve, can be a huge blessing. So if you want to support people in raising their children, support the children, befriend the children, be there for the children, especially teenagers and young adults. They're looking for who they are. They want to try out new things. They need space to be themselves. They also need the community to have a healthy attachment with them. Support them when they need support, and leave them alone when they want to be left alone. In some legalistic Christian cultures, the left alone part is missing, because the community does not trust the person to connect to God for themselves. This brings up something else my father and I have recently discussed. This concept of universal justification, when applied to the family system, becomes universal attachment. If you've been around the world a while, you will see clearly that God has an attachment to everybody. They may not accept it, they may not admit it, but it is there. Where do the non-Christian mothers get their love from to love their children? Do they get it from the devil? No, that's absurd. Do they get it from their flesh? No, because if that was true, people would not need salvation. So God gives it to them. The scripture clearly says, "Other sheep I have, who are not of this fold, and at the right time I shall bring them in, and there shall be one flock, and one shepherd." So, this is very essential. And when you realize this, you will give the young people space to learn their maturity tasks, without being obstructed by excessive control. We have some guidance for their protection, but not to the level where they don't feel free, because remember, freedom is the prerequisite to love. If you don't raise your children in a way that gives them freedom, they won't appreciate your love. That I can promise you. A person would rather have a person would rather have freedom with no love than love with no freedom. That is my personal theory, because in freedom you can find who you are, you can find love other places, you can grow up okay. But if you have love but no freedom, it's like being in a cult. I've been in 4 different cults in my life, and this is very challenging to experience because it's connection without full freedom to be yourself or to think for yourself. Many people who've had spiritual abuse have dealt with this, and that also does not mean that you are sacrificially contributing to your family. You are controlling them to reduce your own annoyance that is the result of dealing with their weaknesses, which every person has to do if they're married, both with their spouse and with their children. This is one of the hard things to be learned in life, is sometimes you have to deal with people who you're related to, where the relationship is very difficult, and there seems to be no escape. So prayerfully enter into it, prayerfully deal with it, because believe me, God is working to help you. There is light at the end of the tunnel. This I can promise you. What happens when the community does not support the parents, or the parents didn't support their children who are now parents enough? Family members are at risk because the parents aren't serving them and protecting them, so they make bad choices and there's no one to help. Or they make a bad choice because they weren't guided and now they have to suffer the consequences, when their parents either could have taught them what not to do beforehand, or could provide support and safety from the consequences of the action, which could be a little heavy for the young person to bear, like premature pregnancy, for example. There are many people who, because they don't receive enough love from their parents, try to get it from their future spouse. This is always a mistake. You should never marry to receive love, only to give it. If you are marrying to escape a bad situation, you will discover that the part of your brain called the amygdala has picked a spouse who has the same issues as your parents who you're running from. And weeks or months after you've said, "I do," you will wake up one morning to this horrifying reality that you've committed your life to a person who is possibly more abusive than the ones that you left. So, my prayers are with people who have made this choice. As I said before, there was always an escape, but there may be suffering between here and there. So, number 2, these people will be deprived because there's good things they didn't get from their parents. Another concept I want to introduce here. There's 2 kinds of trauma. Type B trauma, bad things that happen to you, and type A trauma, good things that don't happen to you. Many people who have had parents who didn't give them any good things aren't even aware they were traumatized. They are unaware of the things which they should have gotten, until the day when someone describes these things that a person should receive when they're a child, and this person begins to feel an intense longing for what they didn't get. They may even cry. Here's a simple example. You were raised never having dessert, and then you visit a different home and your friends have dessert, and you think, why doesn't my family have dessert? I could have used some dessert. There's a lot of deeper emotional issues which I could go into that involve this. Number 3, to feel worthless or unimportant. A child is going to suffer because they don't feel valued by their parents if their parents can't take care of them, or the parents, not being supported by the community, may feel worthless or unimportant within the community. They can also be at risk and deprived because, you see, a person who needs connection to others has that same need even as an adult, also as a parent. So such a person, without the supportive community, will have a harder time parenting than they would have otherwise. They need people who can say, I know this is a tough situation with your child. We're going to pray for you. We're going to support you. We're going to surround you. This is absolutely essential. So, moving on to number 2. The parent is devoted to take care of children without expecting to be taken care of by the children in return. Now, the higher we go in maturity with each task, the more rare in society it is. I think by this point we're down to probably 25% at the most of parents who don't have this problem. And Number 4 learns how to bring children through difficult times and return to joy from other emotions. I would guess at the most 8% of parents have this down, maybe 6. So, if you are missing some of these tasks, don't feel badly. We've now reached the stage where to miss the task I am discussing puts you in the majority. So, many children, if they feel that their parents want something back for the care that they give them, or say they will bless the children if the child does something for them. That is very childish, because to trust you, the child has to know that they are loved and secure in your love, no matter how badly they behave. They have to know that even if they're misbehaving, the essentials will be provided to them, as in food, as in sleep, as in social opportunities. Discipline should be carefully weighed so as not to deprive a child of things which are essential for their psychological well-being. Perhaps a short temporary deprivation can work, especially if the child has a more aggressive personality. A more submissive, sensitive child does not need much punishment at all. I speak from experience. I was spanked 4 times, and in my recollection, that was 4 times too many. I was the kind of child who, if you were to look at me wrong, I could cry because I felt that I had somehow grieved my parents, and that was the last thing that I wanted to do. So a mature parent is happy to care for the kids without requiring anything back. Your joy is in seeing them thrive. If your parents took care of you, or if you worked through the missing maturity tasks after becoming an adult, you will not have any desire for your kids to take care of you. Then they will be free to be themselves. Then they will be free to do what they need to do. So what happens when it supports the parents in doing this? The community promotes devoted parenting. They support the kids, they support the parents. They support the parents in their task of giving without having to receive, possibly ever. What if you were the best parent that you knew, and your kid ends up in drugs on jail? Well, I will tell you, there's always a solution. God knows the causes and effects to everything. He knows that sometimes there can be a genetic tendency from past generations that gives your child a harder time. This is the time to bring up the epigenome in a very clear way. The epigenome edits your DNA continually. Every choice you make, every thought you think, every word you say, everything you do, everything you experience, everybody that you form a bond with affects your DNA, for good or for ill. So if you inherited DNA that was not as awesome as you would have liked, by making good choices and choosing good friends and good words and good thoughts, you can upgrade your DNA considerably over the years. Diet plays a huge role too. Give your body the fuel it needs, and your body will reward you. This is very, very important. Remember, never be discouraged no matter how many issues you have in your life. Every effort towards the positive reaps a reward in your genetic programming and in the respect of those who know you. If your family doesn't understand, God will bring people to you who will, because there's always positive people who like to help other positive people who are going somewhere in life. When the task fails, the children have to care for parents, which is impossible. And this leads to child abuse, neglect, and or parentified children, which blocks instead of facilitating their maturity. So, the children grew up emotionally dwarfed. I mentioned this, I believe, in my video on the infant stage. Many adults are stuck at the infant stage because, being a parentified child, they never learned to care for their own needs, but always ended up caring for others. This is a considerable problem. So what you realize is, it's always possible for the parentified child to receive later in life. Let's scroll back to here. This is often a missing task with a parentified child. This is also often a missing task with a parentified child. Develops trust, learns how to receive, these two things need to be learned. And many parentified kids didn't have any of these things, except some level of cobbling together a self through relationships which were dysfunctional due to these tasks 1, 2, and 3 not being learned, and some level of returning to joy from each unpleasant emotion, which won't be fully successful because of these past tasks being missed. Believe me, if you prayerfully look at these tasks and you see what you have missed, you can really go somewhere in life as you learn the things you've missed. Because as you think about it, it becomes clear. All of these are absolutely essential. Without them, your relationships won't work. Love, marriage, friendship, all these things don't work well at all if you're missing these tasks in the infant stage, or if you're missing these tasks in the child stage. And if you want to have an impact in the world as a single person, you must successfully learn all these tasks as well. Write them down. Put a check mark next to them. Make sure that you've passed them all. God will arrange the passing of each task, and He will bring people into your life that you need, which can take you to the next level. Believe me, I speak from experience. It is so worth it. Now I feel like I'm rapidly growing my maturity, which brings me deep joy personally. So, I think we've covered this to a sufficient degree. Number 3, allows and provides spiritual parents and siblings for their children. This is something that would make parenting so much easier if you're aware of the fact that especially when your child becomes a teenager, but even before, they need other siblings besides their biological ones, especially if they're an only child as I was. And they need other parents, extra fathers and mothers who can give to them the things their own parents are missing. My father is happy to have me receive from other adopted fathers the things he doesn't have. My mother was happy to have me receive things from other mothers that she didn't have. So I'm open to both. This is especially true if you're a single parent. Then you really need extra support both for yourself and for your child. Believe me, there's a solution for every problem. I keep repeating this because the colossal discouragement you may feel as you realize just how much you're missing in your maturity skill set to be an adult or to be a parent may be almost overwhelming, but be not discouraged. Christ is always there. There's always a way out, and there's people you can meet who can tell you a successful path of emotionally maturing as an adult. Believe me, it is so worth it. The community is meant to do this for these parents, to encourage relationships between children and extended family, spiritual family members. And that way the child has someone to go to if their parent has an issue, and they can also go to their parents if a spiritually adopted parent has an issue. But previous tasks must be gone through so the parents can pick good spiritual parents for their children. Because in some cases the parents are dysfunctional, and they pick other spiritual parents for their children that are equally as dysfunctional, and that child is no further ahead. In fact, that child could be further injured. And so I will tell you, as a parent, you must make sure that you are not fear-bonded, which means your amygdala, which I discussed in videos 1, 2, and 3 on the brain, can be set to be subconsciously attracted to fearful people and situations. If that is your brain, be very careful as a parent, because you will end up hurting your child by bringing them into painful situations over and over and over. My mother had this issue. My father, to some degree, too, ended up in painful situations that I wouldn't have chosen, or they could have been good situations which I was experiencing prematurely, resulting in pain. When this task fails, the children are vulnerable to peer pressure, to cults, to any misfortune, and are less likely to succeed in life's goals. You see, because the kids are looking for extended family. They'll find it in gangs, as far as peer pressure, in cults, you see. I've had experience with this too, but praise God I'm being healed. Basically, a cult is a group that makes your being a part of them and being loved conditional upon thinking a certain way or acting a certain way. And if you think about it, this may exclude some Christian denominations, which is a problem, but which needs to be fixed. I mean, some Christian denominations act like cults. They are not, but immature leaders can create a sense of that in their churches. Any misfortune? This is when you have a person where something goes wrong and they don't know who to reach out to, so they suffer. They may get suicidal, they may end their life, they may be discouraged for a long time after a minor setback. Like losing a job, for example. I got a job at a grocery store for one day, because the next day I wanted to help a friend get to town, but it took time for them to get ready, which caused me to be not early but right on time. And I suppose I would have been okay, except that I felt, I can't show up to the store in these clothes, I must change my clothes. And then when I changed my clothes into something clean, I was in a panic because I thought, I'm late. They'll be upset at me, and my mind got stuck. So, these things can happen to people, believe me. People in this situation are less likely to succeed in life's goals. You have to be able to handle misfortune and keep going, and reach out to those who can support you. Parents, if the community doesn't support them, can get overwhelmed without extended family support. In the old days, remember, extended blood family used to be supportive and live close to the parents, but now families are often scattered all over the country, sometimes across borders. I almost had the opportunity to be raised up in Canada with my relatives, but this didn't work out. I wanted to have my cousins around me, but it's never too late because I know them now and I can form a relationship as an adult, which will be mutually satisfying. For you see, the truth is it's never too late to be who you might have been. I read this in the Franklin Planner 22 years ago and I almost cried when I read it. There's always a solution. Let's take a look at the last task. Learns how to bring children through difficult times and return to joy from other emotions. So basically, if you've learned in your own infancy how to return to joy from every unpleasant emotion, you will then be able to learn how to bring your children to joy as well. The reason why these tasks are not one after the other is because these other tasks are very important to be a successful parent. So when you can help your child through difficult times, that means that you'll be glad to be with them. You'll keep reminding them of their true identity even though they misbehave. You'll be able to keep reminding the child of who they are, even if their actions or words or emotions don't seem to indicate that fact. The child will be happy that you sang their own song back to them when they forgot the words. Very much so. This will encourage the child to be braver and take more risks because they know that their mother and father will help them up if they fall again. Kids who don't trust their parents don't take risks because they're afraid of injuring an already tenuous connection or making a painful connection even worse. They feel they have to earn their parents' approval by performing well. This is a very common thing in society to where every single person you meet either knows somebody who had a parent like this, or was a parent like this, or is that kind of parent, or was parented that way. Or perhaps as a child who is that kind of parent, moving a generation down. So believe me, when you desire to help other people through this, help them find their identity when they have lost it because of hard times, you've reached a high level of maturity. Remember, make sure the foundational tasks are well learned before you move on to the next ones. Otherwise, you could find yourself in a problem. There is no shame in backtracking. Being held back a year in school may be good for the child. Being held back in life situations until your maturity matches what you need, maybe just what you should do. Because there are so many immature people that there isn't really shame in being immature as an adult. The shame is pretending to be mature when you are not. People will respect you when you're open about what you can't do, and they will help you to grow. And then you'll have real friends, because honesty and vulnerability create true friendship. Even if you're very immature, there's always a solution, and God will bring to you friends that are peers at your level of maturity. In some cases, they may not be your age, which will feel interesting, but in Hawaii, you find more of this. By the way, Hawaii is also a place where kids are respected as a part of the community, and every child calls their elders auntie or uncle. This is a very good custom. It's something which, with maturity and wisdom, should happen in the mainland too. Just saying. The community supports parents by giving them encouragement, guidance, breaks, and opportunities to recharge. This is essential. Encouragement when you're slogging it out with a tough child can be very meaningful. Guidance when you say, "What do I do now? I don't know what to do." Your child may help you. Your community may give you support and say, "Well, here's an idea. Oh, I never thought of that." For example, suppose that your child has an issue with rage, and they find themselves smashing things over and over. You've tried spanking, you've tried reasoning with them, you've tried finding friends who will be an influence on them to behave better, but nothing works. So you talk to your community and you say, "My child has this anger problem." And one of the wise elders in the community says, "Oh, your child is angry because he has a gluten intolerance. Just stop feeding him wheat and his rage will go away." And you find within 48 hours, issue solved. I'm sure there are situations where this fully applies. Believe me, parents, there is no shame in asking others for support when you're at your wit's end. There may be a simple solution available in your community which you've never thought of. Breaks are important. When you get overwhelmed, you will tend to make bad choices, have a very short fuse, and be less life-giving to your family. If your community gives you a break, well, watch your child for a day while you chill out. You can have a lot of relief. Just to make sure that these are good people, ask God to bring you the right people, because there are many dysfunctional people in society who it would not be safe to leave your child with. But if you ask God to bring the right people, He'll make it clear to you which friends are trustworthy. Another tip: if you need to do this in the very short term, it is always helpful, in many cases, to find a woman to watch your child, as far as not abusing your child. And a woman, especially an older one, will tend to be safer. But again, ask for God guidance, because there's exceptions to every rule. There's people of every age and every gender who are evil. This is a sad fact in our society. Ask God for wisdom. Lean not upon your own understanding, but in all your ways acknowledge Him, and He shall direct your paths. The word for acknowledge originally in the Hebrew is yada, which means close intimacy. It's not just acknowledging God's existence, it's having a close friendship with Him, as you talk to a friend, which will allow you to successfully connect to Him and receive wisdom in a relational way, the very same way that you connect to people around you. This is why your right brain must be healed, or the equipment which you use to connect to God will be impaired, and your ability to hear Him and to feel close to Him will also be impaired. This is worth a whole nother video. The effects on your relationship with God from never having had successful human relationships is colossal, believe me. Opportunities to recharge. When you are recharged from people looking after your kids or also hanging out with you to encourage you, you will find yourself in a better position to again do the hard work of parenting her children and seeing them through to maturity. When the task fails, hopeless, depressed, disintegrating family units develop, because if a person takes risks and their family or community can't help them, they feel hopeless, like I'll never have success because no one helps me. Depressed. Depression is caused by any emotion, positive or negative, that sits there without release. This brings up the subject of the two positive mind states, which I discussed before too. You have 6 negative emotions: hopeless, despair, fear, disgust, anger, and sadness. And you also have the 2 positive emotional mind states of quiet and joy. If you're stuck in joy because your home doesn't know how to rest, you can have depression. If you're stuck in some negative emotion, and or if you never find rest in your home, depression is also the result. I've experienced this as well. Believe me, it is quite something to deal with. But you can get out of it if you have a place of emotional rest where you don't feel you have to do anything. Then your depression can go away. Spend time in nature, alone or with very good friends. You'll find your mood improving by the minute. You may have a food allergy as well. You may have a lack of healthy food, and your brain doesn't have enough fuel from the food to produce the correct neurotransmitters required for a positive mental state. So, disintegrating family units will also develop, where people begin to separate, move away, lose hope because the family isn't thriving anymore. This is a very sad thing. So, I tell you, what you need to do is pray for God to work a miracle in your family, because there's always hope. He will guide you if the whole family unit can be saved, or if you need to move away from your relatives and have spiritual family. Believe me, there's always an option. There's always a way out. Let's take a look at this. Entitlement philosophy pervades modern parenting. I'm entitled to do all the things I was doing as an adult, and I should not have to make any sacrifices of time, money, or social activities. Do not misunderstand. Parenting does involve sacrifice, but it is not about giving up who you are, but becoming who you are. So, this is why it's helpful to have full adult maturity before you become a parent. And when you become a parent, there will be sacrifices. For your child to thrive, you must sacrifice. Think about what would happen if all the parents in society had the mindset of, I shouldn't have to sacrifice my time, money, or social activities. Every child would grow up very mentally ill, possibly even psychotic. So if you want society to keep going, you owe it to society to raise a good child, so that your child will have enough input and support from you to be healthy as an adult. If we have a society full of immature people who have trauma from their own homes, believe me, it is a very sad society. This is why being a good parent is so important. If you are a parent, you must do whatever it takes to become a better one for the sake of your child and for the sake of society. It is vitally important for parents to learn how to protect, serve, and enjoy their families, for all members to be fulfilled. Balancing all 3 requires community support and elder guidance. Elder is the next stage I'll be covering in my next video. Number 8. To protect, serve, and enjoy, protect your kids from harm, including the harm that they would bring upon themselves. Serve them where they feel that I'm receiving good things from my parents, without me having to do anything to earn it. This also is how God parents us, and if you don't see that, I can explain and answer in the next video, because how you were parented will affect your view of God, believe me. Your father will affect your view of God the Father and how He acts. Your experience with your mother will affect your view of the Holy Spirit and its or his or hers function depending upon your viewpoint. Believe me, when it comes to God, what they do is more important than who they are. because otherwise the text says, "Other sheep I have who are not of this fold, and at the right time I shall bring them in, and there shall be one flock and one shepherd," would not be true, because God is successfully parenting many people who don't know there is a God. I have met them. Their maturity and their Christ-likeness is undeniable. Mental concepts come out of our successful relational maturity, not the other way around. Enjoy your family. Rejoice in the blessing that you have, and believe me, your heart was meant to be a parent at the right time. It can actually be fun. Mature parents are aware that they cannot provide everything for their children that they will need, and they will allow opportunities for others to come alongside the child. This is very important, because they will find other trustworthy people who can support their young person in growing up. This is essential. In the end, mature parenting is about representing God to one's family. Like I said above, you'll represent God to your family, always. You will be doing a good job, a mediocre job, or a bad job of it, but you will be doing it. 100% of people have a view of God that bears some resemblance to who their parents were. This is why parents have such a responsibility, not just to raise their children to be good citizens, but to show them who God is. Even if you don't believe in God, be a good parent, because if your child decides to believe in God later, their concept of God will be who you are. You don't want them to suffer. When you accomplish this, you're ready to graduate to the final level of maturity. Praise the Lord. We can grow up even later in life, and you can have the joy of being a successful parent. Thank you for listening, and God bless.